Well, baby, I'm on it with a bottle of wine and an old dirt road, and you're ready to go. Everybody, thanks for joining us today. Live Music Nation podcast. I'm your host, Jake Gill. Today we were with Dave Para from the Big Muddy Folk Festival in Boonville, Missouri. Dave, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Rick. Well, you're welcome. Thanks, you.
So give us a little background on you, Dave. Where are you from and where'd you grow up and how did you get involved with the festival?
Okay. Well, I grew up in the Chicago area. I went to the Old Town School of Folk Music and learned to play some guitar there. And then I came to Missouri to go to MU in 1973. And I started hanging around at the Shea Coffee House, which is on Hitt Street, connected to the Presbyterian Church there. It has been a folk venue since the mid-'60s.
Interesting.
And I lived there. I was one of the residents that lived there and helped program that place. It's where I met my wife, my late wife, Kathy Barton, and we eventually started playing. Well, we got together and started playing music together, and we got married. She got her master's degree in folklore in Kentucky, and and then I went to work for a newspaper. I took some journalism classes. I went to work for some newspapers after we got married, and 5 years later, in '84, I gave up the day job, and Kathy and I played around. She was a great hammer dulcimer player and a great old-time banjo player, and we sang and played together. And did a lot of. One of the reasons I gave up the day job is we were doing some festivals in Connecticut that year and some playing, and I thought, man, I can't just do this on 10 days vacation a year. We need to do something, and so we started playing, and then I started to think, well, I mean, it'd always been a thing. We played for a lot of folk festivals. And
Sure.
And they were run by people who were mostly volunteers or maybe musicians themselves. And so it was just one of those. Part of that was an obligation. Was, well, if we could, we should probably put on an event, and if we can. And when we were living in Boonville, we moved to Boonville in '81 when I started to work for the newspaper there.
Okay.
And so when, after we still lived in Boonville after I gave up the job there. It was cheap to live in Boonville, but there's this wonderful hall. Thespian Hall is this 1850s opera house, and it's
Wow.
a great concert venue. And it was just one of those, well, and we lived a block and a half from the hall, and we'd walk by there and think, we ought to be great to have a folk festival there. John Hartford had done a concert there earlier in the '80s for KOPN Radio, the community radio station. And so I knew, he drew a lot of people. So we started the folk festival there. It was pretty easily accessible to us. We were members of the Friends of Historic Boonville, who owned the theater.
Okay.
And we traveled around, and so I knew a lot of musicians, and we knew a lot of musicians. And so we got together with our friend Bob Dyer, who lived in Boonville as a songwriter, and who we had started to play music with by then, doing concerts and school assemblies and stuff like that. So the three of us got a committee together, and we started putting on the festival in '91. And I've been the artistic director since the beginning, and which meant I usually contacted the artists, and I'd still do the publicity, the writing and those kinds of things, and still Kathy helped me with programming and stuff. So,
yeah, for sure. What is it about for you? What is it about performing that was such a connection for you?
Well, it's got to have a certain amount of ham. There's a thing about being able to stand in front of people and play and make them laugh, and that's the enjoyment. it was great to play music with Kathy live. Kathy herself told me she actually preferred studio work. And she was great in the studio. Man, she was ready to go. And she played.
Right.
And she was a great for that. And maybe a little more reticent on a performance stage. But she got into it, and I was into it, and we made a good sound together, and it was fun giving that to people.
What is it about live entertainment that you think that is so attractive to people?
I just think it's that shared experience, that community experience that people share and witness something. I feel that way about theater performances versus movies. I mean, it's okay to go, it's cool to go to a movie together with a bunch of people and see a movie and experience that. But when you have live actors handing it to you, to me, that's just, I don't know. It's just very real. There's no distance,
Yeah. Nope. I agree 100%.
And you get people with music, folk musician, man, we get people to sing along if we can. And so then that's happening. And that's something, I remember Hartford, John Hartford's advice to, what's his name? Advice to Mark O'Connor, a one-man show. He said, well, you do your thing, and then you get the audience involved, and there's your show.
Yeah.
That's all part of it.
No, absolutely. Tell us about your festival. So it's been going on since '91. Is that correct?
Yeah, this was our 30th we just had this year. We had to skip 20 because we did it in April, and suddenly in March of that year, it's like, oh, we might have to cancel the Big Muddy. Yeah, we did. So.
Yeah. What? How many days is your festival?
Our very first festival was one evening.
Okay.
We and that was based primarily. Kathy and I played back in that year or the year before. We played at the Ann Arbor Folk Festival in Michigan at their Hill Auditorium, which seats a huge number of people. But that's a one evening long, 6 p.m. to midnight festival, and so. We were part of that, and we came home and I said, well, we could do one evening at Thespian Hall. It's only 600 people there, but, we could do that. And so that's what we did. But then our next year, the director of the Friends, Judy Shields, the late Judy Shields, said, well, you're going to have to go to 2 days, and then you really need to have workshops during that day. Workshops are a magic word in the public arts funding world, and if you have workshops, then that's a good thing. So we started doing that the second year. So it's Friday night, Saturday during the day, and then Saturday night.
Okay. All right. Very, very good.
In a couple of times I tried to do Sunday afternoon, and that's not that successful. But.
Yeah. I got you. All right. Couple fun questions. If you could bring one act to your folk festival, dead or alive, who would you bring?
Oh, dead or alive that I hadn't brought? You mean?
Correct.
Now
well,
dead
it doesn't
that
matter.
I did
Yeah,
bring,
you could bring someone back. Yeah, sure.
No, let's see. I always wanted to get Jean Ritchie, who was from Kentucky and lived in Long Island. She was a wonderful singer and kind of like the queen of the mountain dulcimer. She helped introduce the mountain dulcimer to the world when she was singing with Oscar Brand and got out there. She had a Fulbright scholarship. She studied folklore in England. I fell in love with her and her voice and her demeanor back in the 80s when I first saw her. She was very well known in the folk world. I mean, I would have loved to have had Pete Seeger, but he was probably out of my he was out of my range. I would have loved to have had his brother Mike.
Okay.
Mike Seeger was a great traditional musician and a wonderful purveyor. Kathy and I had gotten to know him over the years. I never got Mike. Yeah,
Very good.
I
Very
mean,
good.
okay.
What's the best concert you've ever seen in your life? Any genre, any decade. What's the best concert you've ever seen?
Okay, I hate questions like that. But
no, you don't.
yes, I do.
I
I never prioritize them. Certainly, one of the best concerts I ever saw was the Chieftains, because they were, God, I can't remember how many there was probably 5 or 6 of them at the time, included. And so they had, I mean, they were one of the first, they were a major Irish band in the influence. Paddy Maloney just died this year, the uilleann piper. He was kind of the leader of that band. But so they had this great ensemble sound, great sense of arrangements of their sets of tunes. But then each member of the band did a solo virtuoso performance. You know, each of the 2 fiddlers, Matt Malloy was playing with them, the flute player who had played with the Bothy band.
Oh,
Garrett
wow.
Bell was still alive, playing the hammer dulcimer and the harp. Each one stood up and they all listened and they did this great solo performance. And I thought, well, you know, that's what you should be able to do with an ensemble, not just play everybody all at once all the time.
Yeah.
Just break it down and show it. So that has to go down there for me, but I could probably think of, I don't know. That I'll pick that.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. That's good. What are the future plans for the festival? You guys going to make any major changes?
Well, you know, Kathy passed in 19 after, 10 days after the 29th festival. And then COVID came. So, I mean, we did a festival in November of 21 because I just didn't want to let it go a second year.
Sure.
The crowd was way down, worst crowd we ever had. I mean, I think, and so it's hard for me to figure this all out. I mean, our first festival year of the Big Muddy, Kathy and I had a certain draw from the central Missouri area.
Sure.
I mean, we were doing local TV. I know this is not the question you asked.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But we were doing the local TV show, the Paul Pepper Show, like once a month.
Okay.
We were getting like 10 minutes of free TV time. And so anytime we needed to promote something. So our first year, we had over 400 people. And then there were years that we sold out like a week before the festival. And I mean, selling out meaning, oh no, you can't get 2 seats together. You might, that kind of thing. So
yeah.
But then this in November, and then we did it in May this year, and the crowds weren't a lot better. I don't know. I guess I just read in the New York Times that this is the case for a lot of venues across the country.
Sure.
40% of their attendance from pre-COVID months. But the short answer is I'll just keep trying to do it and see if the audience comes back. Thespian Hall is still a terrific concert venue. I mean, it just feels so good. That was one of the reasons I did that. I had friends that played music, and I wanted to let's be here in this hall, and they all loved it. It's a very intimate, thing.
Yeah.
And I still have the 2 churches that right across the street, who are willing to let us use those spaces. I don't think I'm going to make too many changes. I'm still more leery of my budget because I don't want to, the friends, I don't, it's the Friends of Historic Boonville that produce this festival. So if I start losing them money, even though that festival helps support their operations, they have 3 structures. And I don't know, I'll so I don't have a whole lot of changes in mind. I'll just keep trying to book a festival that I think would be good, that I would like to come to.
Yep.
Kathy and I played every year. That was not our desire. We didn't start a festival so we would have a place to play every year, but we were told by our committee, no, you have to play every year. So we did. Whether or not I don't know how much performing I will do there every year, but I'll probably do something. I do have there's a band we played in May that Kathy used to play in. My lovely wife Erica now has joined that band, and we've had a nice time. But we played. I try not to do the same acts year after year.
Yeah. Yep.
So, I mean, but if people, if I put together a festival and only 200 people are going to show up, then, I don't feel like doing that.
Sure.
I mean, there's a person I know that they do another festival at that hall, a classical music festival. This one person was saying, well, hell, if the thing is paid for, by grants and stuff, I don't care if there's only one person there. Well, I do. And that person who said that is not a performer. And if you're a performer,
right,
you need an audience. And I think that's one of the strengths of our festival, is that Kathy and I and Bob.
Well, baby, I'm on it with a bottle of wine and an old Joe Roadie ready to go.
We weren't, there's a thing about live music. You can go do a thing, and that the people who've put this on don't really know much about live music venues. Somebody had an idea, let's have music.
Sure.
And then you realize that they hadn't thought that much through. Yeah, Kathy and I thought more of that through.
Yeah. No, that's great. I love that insight. That's awesome. Dave, I know you said you're incredibly busy, so just thank you for taking the time to talk with us. It's important. It really is, in what you do and what your wife in the past, the legacy that you guys have built, and now the legacy that you guys will continue to build, is exciting there in Boonville. So I look forward. How can people find you, and how do people find your festival?
Well, there is a bigmuddy.org. That's the website. The Friends of Historic Boonville have their own website, and so that's probably the best way to find out about it. I tried to, that's another thing, in 91, and if I'm sure you can edit the stuff out, but there were plenty of venues for local musicians, especially in Columbia.
Okay.
Where the University of Missouri is, where Kathy and I lived, or, where she lived good part before we got married. And there was an Arts in the Park, and there was a spring festival, and there was a lot of local musicians that came there and played for free, and that's great. But I felt, partly because Kathy and I, by that time, were touring, that we wanted to bring in artists that were touring and getting around that weren't coming to that festival. But I always wanted to have some local musician presence as well and pull them together. I didn't feel like, I felt like, why would anybody come to Boonville and pay money to hear local acts that they can hear for free 4 or 5 times a year?
Yeah.
So that was my feeling. And so that way I could pay a local musician or a group, to come and play, and probably pay them at least as well as they were getting in Missouri. And nowadays, man, the venues are just dropping off. So in some ways, I feel having a venue is still a good idea.
Sure. No, absolutely. I think you're doing a great thing. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. And well, baby, I'm on it with a bottle of wine.